Hey everybody, my name is Snitch. Welcome to another episode of CO Select. Today's match is a tier 3 game on 1 vs 1 Marengo. Another WIJ map. This one's pretty wild. So you see this has these two central comm towers. They're actually fairly contested. It's a bit uncommon for league maps in general, I think, to have this, but in Fog, I'd say, yeah, it's definitely more common in Fog, and especially WIJ maps. There's quite a few like Verdun and Marengo. They have like these towers that are very, they're actually potential objectives. Obviously, it's quite hard to reach, and there's definitely some great places you could throw indirects to defend your tower, but it is definitely something potentially considerable if you are in a winning circumstance. So this map is a 2v1 map. You have these double base side, and then you have the single base side. It's obviously much easier to reinforce the HQ side for Cobalt Ice, which is me in this case. And then Acid Rain, much easier for them to reinforce the southern side. Contested properties on this map is generally kind of this kind of mass here. These like 4 or 5 properties here is kind of what you're playing for on both sides. This outer wing is really interesting. It's quite hard to get to this area if well, I mean, vehicles could get here, but it's really out of the way and definitely away from the central combat. So there's generally a lot of infantry fighting going on these side wings, and yeah, trying to sneak around and get these properties behind the mountains could be really beneficial. But this map is mostly about playing aggressively on your 2-base side, and then using that and any advantage you get to kind of like control maybe the center, maybe help out your single base side. But you're basically playing as defensively as you can on your single base while trying to make as much of an aggressive push as possible on your 2-base side to kind of get an advantage of that way. My opponent today is Lost and Found. Very well-known player, especially among the community. Map committee member, great advanced force player, very high rated. I believe they're generally around 1200. Extremely good player, giving me a lot of advice throughout my time. They are playing Rachel today. Rachel's day today is that her units repair an additional 1 HP. When selling properties, you do pay the cost for this, but it can actually be pretty beneficial, especially when you're like frontline repairing. Getting 3 health could be really like a big difference on units like tanks or even like medium tanks can have a pretty substantial damage difference from getting that additional health point. Her regular power is it Lucky Lass? I can't remember if it's Lucky Lass or if that's Nell's one. But it boosts her luck rate from 0 to 40, I believe, instead of 0 to 9, like most COs. Generally, you won't use this power at all. Not particularly effective. I think it's 0 to 39, actually, now that I think about it. You're actually saving up for her super, which is Covering Fire, which deploys 3 2-range missiles that deal 3 HP damage. They target 3 different... They have 3 different targeting factors. It's opponent's greatest accumulation of foot soldier HP, opponent's greatest accumulation of unit value, and opponent's greatest accumulation of unit HP. Generally, the latter 2 often will overlap, I suppose. But yeah, overall, I guess not always, but yeah. So it's a very strong power, especially on smaller maps. But generally, you can play around it. We've seen it in previous videos, such as one match I had against FKZY, where they played extremely well around my Covering Fire and basically made it completely useless. So it's definitely kind of as you get better at, and get more used to playing against Rachel, it's something you can deal with, but it's an incredibly strong SCOP, and for only 6 stars, it could potentially have a massive impact, even potentially reducing units to 1 HP if you get all 3 missiles on a single target. Today I'm playing Drake, which is, a pretty interesting choice. I played Drake once on the channel, but I actually think he's pretty good on this map. So Drake's day-to-day is that his naval units gain +1 movement and plus 25% or 25 defense. Is it 25%? I don't know what you'd call it. I guess it's like having 2.5 terrain stars, right? But I don't know if you just call it plus 25 defense. And his air units are 20% weaker. He's also unaffected by rain, excluding the vision chance, or the vision reduction, which is obviously quite relevant in Fog. His regular power is Tsunami, which all enemy units take 1 mass damage and lose half their fuel. And his superpower is Typhoon, which deals 2 mass damage to all enemy units and halves their fuel and changes the weather to rain for 1 day, which in Fog... rain does hamper movement a little bit, but not as much as snow does, but also in Fog it will reduce every unit's vision by 1, I believe. So actually pretty potentially influential in Fog, especially on limiting how your opponent can counterattack if they don't have the units to kind of gain information. The main reason I was thinking about Drake on this map is this is actually a very notorious Olaf map as well. The map does get quite stally, especially because there's only so much you can take on your aggressive side. So when you kind of run out of steam, you have to like play towards the center, and the map can end up quite wally, and You know, lots of tank trading, and matches like that generally favor these kind of mass damage COs because they can get access to these really powerful supers, and take advantage of the game that way. Rachel, obviously very similar vein, but a little bit more constricted, I guess, in where it can impact and the fact that you can play around it, whereas Typhoon obviously is just 2 mass damage to everything, so anytime I hit Typhoon I'm automatically getting like big value. So yeah, I think that's all we got for the intro. Let's get into today's game, shall we? This is a really fun game. Like I said, Lost and Found, I'd say pretty good friend of mine at this point. We talk a lot on the community Discord, FAWW. If you're not involved in it, I'd definitely recommend it. Lots of great players there. You can get help, advice, and tips from. Pretty standard cafe so far. How am I doing today? Good, thank you. Actually going on a trip tomorrow. Heading out to Sweden. Which will be a bit of a decline in videos. At least until I get back, which should be about the 28th, I believe, 27th. So actually, Lost and Found goes for APC this game. Pretty good on this map, definitely. Lots of properties you'll accelerate. Since I kind of watched this opening, I've actually started going APC myself quite a lot. You can already see, you know, getting a good boost there. Getting access to some early economy. I'll go for the standard initial tank. Early mech comes out from LNF as well. Maybe a little bit surprising. I think getting mechs with APC is obviously pretty good, but this is definitely a really early one. It's going to be tough for this to get too much value, because mechs normally need to be with tanks as well, or at least artillery. Because the way mechs work is that you can't really let them get first struck, so normally you sit them behind units that are going to get first struck, you know, like infantry or tanks. Normally tanks, I guess, and then when they hit your tank, you get a counter hit with the mech, and it's an extremely effective trade. But obviously in this case, LNF go for a very early mech before the tank line is even established, and just already moving it out. I think it's okay with the APC, but not as effective as it perhaps could be. So yeah, you see, you know, definitely getting to some of these central properties a bit faster paced than I am. Already lining up to get this next one on the following turn. But overall, yeah, pretty standard capture first so far. I also go for a fairly early recon. Can be useful, I suppose. I just like to see what vehicles my opponent is going for on the weaker side. Some people just like to spam out artillery and just play super defensively. So, you know, if you don't see any tanks, you can maybe get an idea of what they're going for. Tank does come out on the weak side as well, if I don't know here. So I'm just moving up, you know, getting these standard captures. Nothing too crazy so far. Moving in towards the comm tower as well. So I'm actually at 3 tanks now. LNF only 2 tanks, and one of them, one of them is just yet to come out. 2 of mine are yet to come out. But they do have access to the mech and the APC, so a little bit of a difference, you know, in that regard. Of the utility, I have this recon at a pretty aggressive spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I do see this infantry capping, but I don't see the mech, right? I think. But I do get information on this infantry in the center, so I can kind of judge the pathing a little bit of some of these infantry. An early copter as well comes out for LNF here. Very aggressive copter purchase. But it did match the 12k that they had access to, so not that crazy, I suppose, to go for like the tempo build that maximizes unit count. That's pretty normal. So I see me just moving out here, getting these properties here. Got this tank covering my infantry. I start going for these properties on the wing as well. It's pretty good stuff. Pull my tanks up towards the center. Take this this aggressive position in the woods. So I do move the recon here into the woods. It is going to get seen by the mech, but it does also reveal the mech itself, which is actually a lot of information for me. I can pretty much normally deduce from this that there's probably an APC as well. And it also means that I'm probably a little bit ahead in tank count. Because my opponent's committed to other vehicles. You see, I'm at 4 tanks as of this turn. They have a copter, but yeah, I'm at 4 tanks, 2 recons to 2 tanks and a copter, basically. So if you think about it in that regard, you know, LNF's gone for like more of the utility stuff in this game, like the APC and the mech build, and you know, that's 8k that wasn't a tank, basically. So I can be a little bit confident with regards to my tank count, which will definitely influence me playing aggressively if I get an opportunity. The artillery does come out on the weak side here. I did mention, you know, some players like to put a lot of artillery over here because there's lots of great forests and stuff to hide in that you can really hold some great defensive cities. I choose to go for the interrupt on this infantry, mainly because I saw the mech in the middle as well. I'm fairly confident there shouldn't be too many vehicles in this area yet, because I should know that if there's a mech, there should be an APC. So catch a vision of the mech in the mountains let me get a lot of information. So I do just cleanly pick off this infantry. Even if I get attacked back, I'm fairly sure I could just retreat to my cities and heal off. And it does really limit You know, taking out this aggressive infantry, especially because it was kind of responsible for a lot of these properties, it was quite isolated. So taking it out is definitely going to limit how fast LNF can get these properties that they're meant to get, you know, in quotations. So yeah, moving more tanks into the top side. I built this recon to pull it down here to the bottom side, just because, yeah, again, I kind of get, you know, an idea of the APC, and definitely could be some tricky stuff going on. So I will see now that the comm tower started to get captured. I do take a hit on this tank. It's kind of unfortunate, but something I was definitely, you know, privy to the possibility of. I ended up going for the artillery on my top side instead of going for on my weaker side. Definitely debatable which way is better for sure. I think maybe the weaker side may have been the better choice of just building more tanks up here to try and pressure more. I see this tank move up onto this city with my recon. Go for the interrupt on the same property on the other side. This is normally a pretty fine thing to do as well on the side where you have two bases, because normally that means you'll always have more infantry coming, so taking out your opponent's infantry will definitely limit how much they can contest. Because from a certain point, they can't really afford to keep building infantry in this area. They have to build vehicles to hold the line, basically. So you'll just, you know, pretty much always have infantry in numbers. So, you know, taking good trades like this is really favorable for me in the long run. So yeah, I pulled the tank back to the city, get a second tank. I built the second tank down here, I guess, to reinforce this tank, but an artillery could have done the job as well, I suppose. Wouldn't have been crazy. But it does let me get the artillery up here, maybe to push some aggressive properties. We'll kind of push into the cities, which normally would be a lot harder with just tanks. So LNF's next turn, they're starting to capture these wing properties now as well. APC still boosting units whenever it can, getting in position for the next mech. So they are going to get the interrupt on this property, which is going to reveal my tank. They might go for a first strike. I did see this artillery go into this woods with my recon positioning. I don't know, it's interesting. Maybe they didn't see that I had a recon here because it moved on that mech turn. Maybe they didn't check the replay. I feel like they should be aware of where my recon is stationed. It hasn't moved for, you know, any of these turns. And they did see when it initially went in. So they should be, you know, aware of the fact that the recon is in this woods, but maybe they just missed it or they didn't check the replay, like I said, which means that they're not noticing that I'm getting all of this information, like the fact that the artillery is purchased at all and that it's in this woods is two massive bits of intel for me. They are positioning these aggressive units on the bottom side. Building more tanks. This tank is going to stay on the city, even though it's only HP. So yeah, this tank obviously reveals itself. I'm going to move in, crush it with a double hit with the infantry, start capturing this property again. Like I said, completely aware of where the artillery is. I'm not going to play into its range if I can avoid it, but I am going to put an infantry into these woods to take out this infantry. And then I can take a first strike on this infantry as well. I'm really confident in my unit count now, on my tank advantage at least. Now that I've taken out one tank, and I know that there's an artillery, I feel really confident there should only really be one more tank, or maybe another one coming from the factory next turn, but I think I can only get counter hit one time. So I feel really confident just taking a first strike here, really crushing this top side at this point. Moving more infantry in, got the artillery coming as well. Another tank on the way. Put this infantry up on the mountains down here, which does reveal this tank, and let's be going for a 2-hit. I feel pretty fine taking it. The tank was really aggressively positioned. And I have another tank coming. Obviously, there's a copter here that I'm not aware of, but and maybe there could have been mechs or something, but you know, it seemed like a pretty reasonable 2-hit KO to me. I built an anti-air on the top side, kind of thinking maybe there could be some sort of copter coming. Actually, an interesting anti-air purchase from LNF here. Definitely very preemptive, and especially against a CEO like Drake. I think you shouldn't necessarily expect to see too many copters too early. Generally, obviously, because of the weaker air units, copters still can get the job done for the most part, but they're definitely not as effective as Drake's tanks are, compared to a CEO like Olaf, who, you know, is quite similar but doesn't have the glaring weakness. So yeah, you see them move in here, get some really aggressive attacks, pick off a tank. I take another first strike on the tank, lose this infantry as well. This infantry is actually on this mountain, I think, but it didn't show up in the replay. They even got this wing property up here. It's really good for them. So with regards to economy, I'm a little bit behind right now for sure. And yeah, so many units on the way here. Got this mech coming. This mech has kind of just been sitting in the mountains, which is not, I don't know, it's interesting. I'm not really sure about this build. This was the early mech that came out. So yeah, I'm gonna get some of these aggressive properties. Oh, actually, I didn't get hit here. I guess I didn't get hit, and I did actually end up capping this property. Oh yeah, I forgot, this infantry actually got ignored. It just disappeared on the replay, but it actually got ignored, and I ended up getting this property, at least for a short while. I'm not sure how well I'll be able to hold it, but I do have it for at least for now. So yeah, now that I've secured this property, I've got this one up here. I'm assuming this one is neutral, but it's actually not. But now that now that I've kind of feel like I'm pretty confidently winning this side, at this point I'm pulling my units back a bit. I've got an artillery in a really solid position, covering all this infantry in case my opponent goes in for an attack. But at this point, I'm kind of playing to that idea of like, this area is very much in my control. These properties are way too hard to get to. But sending a couple, like, a tank and maybe 2 infantry or even just 2 or 3 infantry up here should control this property if my opponent has gone for it. So I'm now pulling all of my tanks into the center to kind of maybe come down and reinforce this lower area if it is a problem. Because I am taking a lot of hits here. This copter got a really big first strike. Or actually, I took out a tank entirely. And, it really seems my opponent is focusing on this lower side. I do get an anti-air on the bottom side now. Another tank on the top. Trying to help control this copter. This infantry is going to die. Narrowly survives the double hit and does force a 3rd strike. That's always what you love to see. You love to see bad luck. They actually go for an aggressive cap on the comm tower here. You can see the same thing. Kind of these tanks are pulling up a little bit more centrally, ready to move across if there is any potential reason to do so. Again, I have another great recon in these woods. Like, both these recons are giving me so much information. I also have this infantry on the mountains, but this recon just revealed basically all of these moves, so I know exactly the position of all of my opponent's vehicles. Definitely getting great intel from the recons this game. And this infantry does reveal itself, because I have the infantry on the mountain, so I now know that my opponent should have this property, so it's definitely something I want to try and contest if I can. So coming into my next turn, yeah, I start moving up to go for that property, like I said. Interrupt this cap with the recon. And I bring this tank in for a 1st strike on the tank on the road. It's pretty aggressive, but I am, yeah, so I'm now cycling all these tanks from the center. So I'm using this tank to kind of like bait more attacks in, because I'm now bringing all these tanks into this lower end. My opponent's super backed off on the top side. There's 2 tanks there being kind of wasted, so I actually have a 5-3 tank advantage in this area. And an anti-air to cover the copter, hopefully, if I can. Obviously there is a mech here as well, but the mech's not in range to do anything just yet. And I know its exact position because I had the recon in the woods last turn. I'm just going for the 2 hit on this infantry. And I interrupt with this 5 HP tank. Definitely quite aggressive, but again, I'm kind of swinging my units over. If I can force these tanks to commit, I mean, I guess the mech would just pick it off, but if I can force a fight here, I feel like my reinforcements are kind of on the way. Maybe unseen, hopefully unseen, although I do think this infantry probably picked up a fair amount of information on them. But I should be able to, like, maybe do something pretty aggressive with my tank advantage. I go for a pretty early tech up into a medium here. Because this side, I'm kind of struggling over here. My top side is fairly fine, but I want to kind of build a bigger army to help hold this bottom side, so I do go for the early medium. So yeah, the mech, let's pick up the 4 HP tank. And I'm taking some infantry 1st strikes here. I'm going to lose 1. Get 1st strike here, double. It does reveal some of my tanks. But this tank is going to move up anyway. And get a hit here. The 4 HP is going to pick it off. And this tank moves up to actually kill the recon from the comm tower, revealing the rest of my tanks. And then the APC is going to come up and then try and block some of these attacks. This anti-air moves out, goes for a 1-shot on the infantry. My opponent now thinking I've rotated all my forces over, but obviously I've still left the tank here to cover these units, and I have this great artillery in a really aggressive position. Gonna take another 1st strike on the infantry here. This tank's moving on to the comm tower, and again I'm seeing all of this again. I see the artillery is just kind of circling around. I can assume this is the same artillery as in the woods before, so I'm catching full view of my opponent's rotations. This tank moves into here to get a 1st strike, and it lands on a road. So juicy. So I'm gonna lose another infantry here, but my artillery is in such a great spot. And even with like minimal units here, I've got 1 tank, 1 artillery, and an anti-air on the way. I should be able to get some great counter damage here. Let's come into my next turn. Do go for that artillery hit on the tank. Get a huge hit here for 7 damage. Super value. Start moving on to this property over here, which opens up my tank to get a hit on this anti-air from the city. Moving my anti-air forwards as well. I pull my recon out of the woods into the center to get a hit on this infantry. Lets me 2-hit KO it. Then opens up this APC to get 2-hit KO by the tank infantry, which will then open up the comm tower. I hit the tank, and then I drop Typhoon, getting that 2 mass damage. Super impactful. Immediately you see health bars bleeding across the board. opening up a lot of KOs here. I pull in the anti-air to kill this 2 HP tank, which also reveals the tank in the woods, and lets me finish that up as well. Almost lives on 1 HP. The big downside to this is obviously covering fire is available, so it is something I have to consider. I'm reinforcing this top side with more units. I pick up the 1 AP tank with my my infantry here. One thing I think that goes kind of unnoticed is I think with mass damage powers and stuff like covering fire, I'm pretty sure they always put a unit to the, like, you know, they'll always do 20% damage, but in some cases, you know, you can, if they were like 3 HP, you could, it's very plausible they're like very close to like 0.1. You know, obviously units have a range of, you know, 0.1 to 0.9 HP, and that's counted as 1 HP. So when they get hit by a mass damage power like this, I think it's always safer to err on the side of them being as low as they possibly could at that range, you know, or like, I felt fairly confident, even though it's a very low HP infantry, that it could probably finish off this tank just because of the nature of the powers. Like, let's say, you know, when it was 3 HP, it was 2.6, I guess. Getting the 2 down puts it to 0.6. I don't know. Maybe it's not a great example. I guess it's better with like powers like covering fire that do 3 damage, where it's more realistic to put something to 0.1 HP. But I guess I just felt fairly confident that it was going to be fairly low. So I got a first strike here with the infantry. I move my medium tank down 1 space, and I realized suddenly that I have to think about covering fire. So I have to go for this, the most insane build of my life, which is a missiles. I couldn't afford a Neo tank, because I only had 21,600. If I had 22, obviously this would have been a Neo tank, but I actually have to go for a battlecopter missiles build here, which is just enough. If I can pull up the move planner and show you guys. If we do, this is a great thing to do, by the way. You can just pull up the move planner, click on Rachel, SCOP, show missiles, and it's bugged because it's the replay, but oh wait, it's not it hasn't got the turn. Let me can I move on to the next turn? I don't think there's any more fighting. Yeah, so now I can open the move planner and show you guys. So yeah, if I show the Rachel SCOP, you'll see that the third missile just narrowly hits this area. So I was really trying to limit how much damage I took in the center here. Initially it was 2 missiles, and obviously if I take 6 damage on all my tanks, this is a complete disaster. So yeah, I do manage to get this crazy build which features some missiles, which is like the only time I think I've ever legitimately built missiles in a elite game, but it is gonna narrowly manage to take covering fire and make it only 1 missile hit the center area, which is way more beneficial for me and will not result in my entire army getting blown up. This infantry clings on for life, 1 HP, what a hero. My opponent's kind of reinforcing these lower tanks. So I did get a massive blowout here in this bot fight. Feeling really good about that. This infantry's going to come up and interrupt this capture. That kind of sucks. And you see like that now that I've shown all of these units over here, they're feeling very confident about this upper area. But they did face check the artillery, and they don't have any units to hit it. So this really aggressive artillery positioning really paid off for me here. And they go for a medium tank build here as well. We definitely have the same vibe. I'm sure you noticed there that the Typhoon vision was a little bit limited, like definitely limited vision a little bit. You do have to be cautious about that when playing Drake, because it could actually inhibit your own attacks sometimes, which could be a big problem. I sack this recon to take out this tank. Obviously against Rachel, her getting repairs is a lot faster than other COs, so I normally feel quite threatened to pick off wounded units when I can. Like obviously I'm going to lose this recon as a result, but it is giving me some information of what's coming. You know, I can see the copters over here, I can see an artillery and anti-air. I kind of know what units my opponent has coming. I don't manage to catch any vision of the tanks quite, but I do get some valuable intel, and I get to finish off a tank that would have got repaired otherwise. Move my missiles out, start capturing, try to capture some of my opponent's properties here. Now that I've kind of control of the area, and I'm moving this medium tank out here. Finally, it did get delayed a turn because I had to use it to catch the covering fire, which is unfortunate. I'm kind of backing up on the top side here a bit because I do recognize that my opponent is now pushing into the top side, so I'm getting some tanks on the cities up here. Once again, reinforcing this northern area. So yeah, recon does go down, but does get vision of a tank as well. This infantry goes into the mountain, which is going to reveal the fact that I have a medium tank. It's kind of unfortunate that I wasn't able to pick that last infantry off before it was able to get any intel. I also have an infantry on the mountains here as well, so I am going to see this tank going into this woods. So I do know there's at least 1 tank up here. opponent's just kind of, yeah, once again, retreating as well. Handshaking the retreat. This is pretty standard stuff. You know, one side decides to retreat, the other one as well, you kind of want to retreat, rebuild your army. So we kind of handshake a retreat up here. Temporary peace treaty. These units are moving forwards. Definitely going to try and get the interrupt of this capture. Looks like I'm going to be able to pick up this northern city, though, hopefully, on the next turn. This tank shouldn't be able to get in range. So I do decide to join cap here just to make sure I get it. Bringing more infantry forwards to the top side. Get a 1 HP recon in here. Here's the medium tank, pick up that infantry. How dare it reveal me. Sneaking forward with my missiles. You know this unit's going to get mad value. And I'm pushing forward a bit here, kind of reforming a wall on the top side. Gonna try to control, or make sure I can control some of these contested properties, especially this one. I know there's infantry in this area, so I'm getting this artillery in a position where it could hit anything on the city. Should it be a problem. And shuffling some more units to the southern area here. I do have a B-copter as well, which I did build for that one turn. I don't think Drake copters are, yeah, like I said, not insanely terrible. Definitely wouldn't recommend going anything like bombers on him. That's quite a bit worse than going something like a B-copter, but a B-copter generally gets a lot of value, and if you hit an enemy B-copter with your B-copter, it's still going to do great damage, so that's not a problem. I probably goes for this aggressive capture, trying to get the city here. I'm going to reveal all of their units, especially given that I have the mountain vision, but this medium tank is going to barely stay out of range, so I don't have information on that. So I go for a little bit of a bait here, try to get me to commit to an attack, which would then obviously get countered by the medium tank. Another medium tank coming on the southern base. It's actually a 27k build turn. Oh, that says 28k for some reason. Just sitting around. They got a small loan. And they actually don't go for the interrupt of this property, so I'm going to get a property swing here as well. So that's actually 2 properties from my opponent going to me in the last turn, which is pretty good. I'm actually going to swing in with the anti-here to get hit with this artillery. It's going to do 5 damage, which is definitely not bad. And I've got a pretty good artillery position here as well, covering my tank. Pulling some more tanks over because I see my opponent pushing in on the top side aggressively. So I'm going to get this property swing. That's pretty good. Get an infantry on these woods. And once again, just kind of shuffling my units towards the center of the map, ready to kind of hold position. You know, I built a little formation here to hold my contested properties where I can. I'm just going to try and use this income advantage to like slowly build out a bigger army. Get to my next Typhoon and then use that to kind of get a large advantage. So medium tank does reveal itself here. Gets the one shot on my anti-air. That hurts, but you know, we deal with those. The recon just rams into my forces here, revealing my missiles, which is very sad. And actually reveals this copter, which I didn't really think was in any danger, but it is actually gonna end up getting picked off because of the fortunate reveal from the recon. If I was, you know, one space to the right or something, I would have been fine. But yeah, tragically, it is sniped out. So a great pickup for my opponent there. Although at the same time, again, it's Drake battlecopters. I'm not saying they're nothing, but it's not as big a loss as if I was something like Eagle or even just a CEO with regular strength battlecopters. I honestly think trading an anti-air for a battlecopter as Drake is not even too awful. Like, obviously, it's a little bit less efficient money-wise, but with regards to like value for the army, I think it's pretty fine. So I'm gonna pick up this recon. Take out this infantry, getting some counterattacks. So I go for another contested property here. Pull up an artillery to cover my medium tank, but it is sat in the woods and it's out of range of all these artillery barely, so it should be fairly safe. I have to 2A KO this artillery sadly, and I decided to go for this infantry KO, which is definitely a bit aggressive. But I end up revealing the artillery here. I go for a first strike on the artillery, but then I reveal another artillery, so that's really unfortunate. Definitely playing a little bit over aggressively here, especially because it's my weaker area. Get the missiles in a solid position, ready to counterattack any air attacks coming in. You love to see it. And I start swinging some more tanks down again, because I see there's a fight starting out here, and I really just don't have the numbers. Create a bit of a defensive formation with my artillery here on the top side. I'm very cognizant of the fact I'm ahead in money here. I think I'm only 2k up, but my opponent actually never got this southern right city. So I'm actually 3k up. So I'm actually even more ahead than I thought I was. I thought I was only like 2k up for most of this game. Definitely good to get in the habit of trying to track how much money your opponent should have, so you can be, you know, obviously I know that even if I just look at the contested properties, I'm ahead, right? But being aware of the exact figures can definitely be pretty important. So my opponent's next turn, I'm definitely gonna get blown out here. Doing an interrupt from this mountain. Losing a bunch of units, very unfortunate stuff. So yeah, all my units gonna drop here. Went for another contested attempted property grab, but they've got other infantry to interrupt that. The great thing about missiles, you know, is they got that 5 vision. It's basically just a better recon. So I am still getting a lot of good intel here. I think that was a recon that hit this. Oh no, it was the 5 HP artillery hits the infantry on the mountains. They go for this capture again. A copter appears as well. Obviously I lost my anti-air, so this copter is definitely in a great position. Medium tank pulls back defensively. Going on to my next turn. I decided to start taking swings on the Southern Army here. I reveal this artillery. I actually ended up revealing the medium tank as well. But I am going to be able to pick off this artillery, which lets me put my medium tank... Oh, it lets me get a first strike with my medium tank even. So pretty aggressive first strike. Does end up with a 6-6, so not super favorable for me. But I'm getting a lot of good first strikes here. I've got a great aggressive artillery position again. I'm going to use the artillery up here to pick off this infantry. Unless we take out this anti-air as well. And I'm just going to go for some first strike of my opponent's infantry here. Just trying to limit how much actual availability they have to... actually capture any properties here, and it also opens up Typhoon, so I managed to get just enough damage to bring me into super range. But once again, I'm really stacked for cover and fire. It kind of happened twice this game. Definitely pretty unfortunate. I don't think I have any way to buy anything to get out of this one. I think I was checking the move platter at this point to see if there's any way I can get anything, so I just go for standard builds, because I just don't have the way to like pull any missiles, so I'm definitely going to take a lot of damage from this one. Do lose a couple of infantry here. The medium tank actually chooses to pick off this one, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then yeah, covering fire comes out. Could have maybe been worse. It was 2 missiles down here and 1 up here. So definitely not ideal. Gonna be taking a lot of damage. But some of my units did get away unscathed, especially on the lower side. I probably actually went for a very defensive rockets build to cover some of these aggressive properties maybe. Copter hits this tank for 2 damage, that hurts. Somehow that tank died. I think we missed an attack. Because I don't think an 8 HP tank should one-shot a full HP tank. Maybe this got missiled as well, and it's just not updating. Because that doesn't look right to me, but, you know, I only play a little bit of Advanced Bow Web, so I can't be too sure. I'm going to lose my medium tank here to the 4 HP medium tank. This infantry isn't quite able to take out this tank, which is very unfortunate. But I'm going to lose another tank, but I do have this great artillery position once again, which should enable me to be a solid counter hit. But yeah, definitely a great turn for LNF. Alright, here we go. Then we can assess the real damage done. So all my tanks are super bleeding. I'm going to get a big hit on this tank in response. I'm going to pull up another tank. Just continue to take some trades with the kind of the full HP options that I have. I pick off this infantry with my tank instead. Maybe so I can sneak this property. But it does open up the city for my opponent to sit on. So definitely, you know, a little bit crazy. I do pull back a 1 HP tank to sit on there, but it's obviously not going to hold. Hey, see, this tank living on 1 HP is the kind of thing I'm talking about with Rachel, where normally this would be a very long time for any CO before this is relevant again, but in 2 turns this tank is going to be at 7 HP. So it could definitely be a big threat with only a couple turns of repair. So yeah, these fights are definitely getting a bit wild. Unit count is pretty much even. I guess I'm 1 behind. I ended up picking up a Neo tank here. And army value also pretty even. Generally, you know, at the end of your turn, you want to be half an income ahead of your opponent. So you can see, yeah, you can see here that I managed to end up at about 112, and my opponent was at 102. So we're pretty close with regards to unit value. My missiles gets targeted by this recon, but it lives on 2 HP. It's actually crazy. I didn't know how effective missiles actually are against machine guns. It's kind of it's one of those things you probably just don't know, because who the hell's building missiles? But yeah, they're actually fairly defensive against machine guns. Recons don't really do any damage to missiles like they do to rockets, which I thought was really interesting. So you can see now my opponent, LNF, deciding to move down and focus on this aggressive side, making a pivot with this medium tank, especially a very difficult thing to do. I was kind of surprised that this medium tank's making the trek all the way along. I think I may have seen it. No, I don't think so. I don't think I quite caught vision of it. And then this tank is going to swing around from the other side and get the interrupt on this 1 HP city. Very unfortunate stuff. So I'm going to have some first strikes where I can again. I get both these tanks really low. And I get a hit on this recon as well. I pull the missiles off, so I should bring in an infantry. And I get a great roll where I manage to kill it when it's 3 HP. Which opens up another first strike here. And I pull this Neo in. I know all these tanks are just really low at this point. I know the medium tank is healing, so I'm feeling fairly good about it. So I slide in top side as well, get a swing on this mech, which does reveal the rockets. Which lets me get a nice first strike on the rockets. I'm not sure. I think, yeah, my opponent actually put it in range of this mountain. That's why I went for it. I don't know if this was meant to be a bait. But obviously it's an extremely valuable hit for me. You know, as soon as I do 7 damage to this, that's like way more than the tank's worth of value. So I definitely didn't feel too bad about it, and I have more tanks coming to reinforce as well. So yeah, definitely this hit on this rocket was really impactful, I think, for me. Maybe they just didn't expect me to have an infantry, and I can literally see the infantry in the mountains, so pretty maybe just a slip from LNF here to reveal it. So Copter comes into my missile range, critical error. This artillery is going to get picked off. All these low HP tanks trying to do as much work as they can. My Neo tank is going to get revealed here. I'm going to lose a tank to a double hit here. This medium tank choosing not to go. Actually, I can't reach the tank here. Unless this infantry was... he could have taken out this infantry and then pulled the medium tank up here and hit this tank. So instead of committing to this fight, LNF's actually still choosing to swing down to the bottom side. The medium tank chooses to completely ignore this northern fight. Maybe scared of my artillery position. They know I have an artillery up here somewhere. They could have thought that I was maybe baiting into it. So yeah, medium tank takes a hit from the city. And yeah, this force is looking really strong for my opponent. Definitely scary stuff. And actually choose to build a T-copter as well. Trying to get some more mechs out. Missiles! Good job, buddy. Took out that B-copter. You'll love to see it. Use my infantry to pick up this tank, which opens up another tank to come in, finish off this 6 HP, get a big opening here on this anti-air. Maybe not super relevant to focus, but you know, it's not the end of the world. And I get a nice hit, a couple of hits on this tank as well. I use my Neo tank to pick up this infantry. You love to see it. Maybe a little bit scary with a 9 HP medium here. Definitely could get a nice opening strike on my Neo, but it's pretty committal from my opponent that choose to go for that. And also it get me pretty close to super as well. I do pick up this infantry standing on the city, not aware that the medium tank is kind of waiting in, well, hiding in wait. And I shuffle some units around up here, trying to hold these contested properties with my kind of dwindling forces, especially because the fighting is a lot of it has ended up on this side, which is definitely, you know, favorable for my opponent, much easier for them to reinforce in the long run. But I think I'm doing pretty well in the fighting here. So yeah, they do go for this opening strike, like I mentioned, which does do 4 damage, you know, 4 for 4, definitely not something to be upset about. I guess some nice pickoffs here as well. Pull up another tank, get a first strike. Definitely a lot of aggressive fighting for me this game. This infantry does pick off my infantry, but this tank isn't quite vision, so the medium tank has no way to actually hit it. So it is saved. And then covering fire does actually end up able to come out. Fortunately, it was after a lot of these units had moved to the bottom side, so I probably would have got obliterated down here. So I am actually able to survive down here fairly, but I'm kind of getting obliterated up here instead. It's a trade-off. So yeah, looking pretty good for my opponent now. This T-copter's coming. I guess it unloaded the mech. There should have been a mech here as well, but it's vanished. But I am able to get Typhoon. I was definitely feeling not super confident at this point. But yeah, I do get a Typhoon. This is super funky. I think this is not what the match looks like at all right now. I think a bunch of ghost units have appeared. Let's try again, shall we? There we go. So I'm going to pull back the Neo here. Does open up a double strike with this medium tank, which I'm going to pick off. Get this tank with an infantry as well. I'm just trying to take some more free strikes with infantry here, but definitely a bit reckless. I'm probably going to end up losing this tank at this point. Pick up a tank with the anti-air tank combo. Pulling in more tanks to reinforce. But yeah, this side's definitely looking a bit scary. This rocket isn't quite in range to do anything valuable yet, and the same with the artillery, but very close to getting to good lockdown positions. And yeah, definitely an ugly turn for me. But I am doing pretty well in unit value still overall. Typhoon getting the job done. Really getting some big value. So my opponent is going to go ahead, take out this infantry, start trying to capture this property. Choosing to pull back on the bottom side a bit. Yeah, there was a mech in that T-copter. I knew it! End up choosing not to go for the hit on this tank, knowing that it's a medium range, I suppose. Once again, I'm trying to capture this property as well. I'm just going to go ahead and take the hit myself then. You know, no complaints here. This tank actually managed to survive just because of lack of vision from my opponent. This is definitely a problem you start to face, especially once you get into kind of like the bigger tank part of the game in Fog, is you really start to struggle just to see things if you don't get recons out. So, you know, definitely a problem that my opponent's facing a little bit. There's a couple turns here where the medium tank hasn't been able to get a good attack in because it just can't see. Put the anti-air in here to aggressively interrupt this property, but I do manage to pick off a tank as well. I can't imagine my opponent has too many more tanks in the area from what I saw before. I'm just kind of hoping they don't. Reinforcing this bottom side to a bit of a defensive position. Got the missiles standing strong at 1 HP. What a hero. This tank is going to get hit by the artillery. Pretty unfortunate. And once again, they're going for this contested or this property on the top side, as I'm capturing the one on the bottom side. But they are going to try and move in, get this interrupt. This tank does survive on 1 HP, which is going to save this capture, I think. Barely. So really huge luck roll for me there, because I think I wouldn't get this city next turn if I didn't survive that. This medium tank, I think, no, the medium tank could have got in position. Oh yeah, no, sorry, it was here, yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could have got in position to swing on this infantry. And it would have been able to save the city. Although I guess I did have a really solid medium tank positioning as well. But I am actually going to end up swinging this capture. And like I said, my opponent's at this bottom right city. So this actually puts me 4k up, I believe, 5k up. So what happens here? I move this infantry in at 3 HP, just try and get some scouting information, and I reveal both indirects, the one in the woods and the one in the forest, or the one on the plains. I knew that my opponent had 2, just because of the way the attacks had gone, but it opens up both, and I get to just ram in and take them both out, so that feels really good. Obviously, they're very, very difficult to replace. I use the anti-air here while it's pretty low to take a swing on this infantry to try and limit my opponent going for these upper left properties, which they're obviously trying to sneak as well. I don't have to worry about this infantry immediately, because, it's 12 HP to get this city, so I feel pretty fine leaving it for this turn. Choose to pull back a bit here on the bottom side. I did get the city I wanted, so I feel pretty confident overall. How did I get to 22? I guess I'm at 22 to 19? 22 to 18? I don't know. Yeah, 23 to 18, that's what I thought. So I'm actually 5k income ahead right now, so you can just see I'm going to start massing out big tanks where I can. You know, you've kind of seen... I have a Neo down here, I have a bunch of mediums. I'm much able to at this point in the game, you know, I'm going to try and like hold the line and just start trying to medium spam, honestly. Because if I could just get, much like in the early game when you're ahead in economy, you just get more tanks than your opponent. And then when you're ahead in the mid-late game, I could just get more medium tanks than my opponent. You know, what are they going to do? Because they can't build as many medium tanks as I can, obviously, as efficiently, or even Neo tanks, or you know, if I was another CO, maybe bombers, but... I just have a better income going, so it's a lot easier for me to get more of these larger tanks out. So it's kind of like the angle I'm taking right now. Shuffling around my opponent, really aggressive artillery position here, but it's definitely going to be a big threat on this city if I try to put anything on there. And I don't have any vision of it, I think, so definitely works for my opponent. I do see the city getting captured, but I have the infantry lying in wait, so I do get a big hit on this infantry, pretty much stopping this capture entirely. Take out this tank with a 2-hit KO, reinforcing with a 3rd tank, using that to pick off the city infantry. I do see a tank here, but I know, you know, there's probably only one on this area, so always a tank ahead. And I just reinforce 2 tanks to 1, you know, every... If I'm putting out 2 tanks every turn, I'm getting 2 tanks here every time, and then my opponent's only getting 1 tank. So considering I have 2 more tanks coming as well, and I only see the 1 tank, I'm pretty confident I once again have a unit advantage at this top side. Walk onto the mountain to hit this... T-copter, and also get some scouting information. So I do reveal all my opponent's units here, including the artillery that I was talking about. Pull my Neo tank into the woods up here pretty aggressively. And then yeah, I've got another medium tank coming. You know, at this point I'm just slamming mediums. Seems like a good way to hold my weak side. They're finally going for this southern right capture. So you know, in my head I'm 4k ahead here. I'm not expecting to be 5k up, but yeah, definitely a pretty substantial advantage in that regard. I mean, you might think that with 18k, you know, that could be a medium and 2 infantry every turn, but you do have to consider repairs as well. A lot of the time at this point of the game, you're aggressively repairing units on the front lines to try and get, you know, keep them in combat. So it's definitely something you have to consider funding wise. This T-copter flies in trying to get some scouting information. It reveals literally nothing. But I thought it was quite interesting. I was actually talking to LLF about this game in kind of real time, and they mentioned how they actually felt that this was a lot of information because it didn't hit anything. They expected to hit something. So they thought my army was actually pivoting towards the center, I think they said. But actually, it just happens to fly through a rank that I'm just not covering, you know? Or a file? Which one is the rank in the file? I think the rank is maybe a horizontal. This might be a file, but it shoots up this file and just hits nothing. It just hits nothing and then sees nothing. So my opponent immediately thinks that I'm pivoting towards the center here, I think, just because they happen to not hit any of my army lying in wait, and this infantry only sees this medium tank, so all my units are just narrowly over here to the side, just out of vision. So I thought that was kind of funny. Pull the anti-air to reveal this infantry and pick it off, just to kind of shut down any attempt at taking my properties there. This tank's next on the city. I'm just going to go ahead and go for the 2-hit KO. I ain't scared. Missiles, that's another great hit in. Good job, missiles, buddy. Proud of you. Sets up the recon to finish off this T-copter. So I avoid revealing any of my important units. I managed to get a reinforcing recon plus my missiles to pick off this T-copter. And I start positioning maybe to try and threaten these side cities on the wing. Because like I said, it's very hard for vehicles to get in a solid position here to do much about it. So I'm thinking maybe I can kind of pressure this lower right city and just keep pushing that economy advantage where I can. Even though at this point, I already feel very confident that I can pretty much just sit still and just keep building a bigger army. I'm just looking for any opportunities where, I put the infantry on the city here to scout and I don't see anything in this area, so maybe I was thinking this could be undefended. I didn't even know that my opponent hadn't even captured it yet. Sit a tank on this aggressive property. Aggressive on this property, not my city. So this tank comes out, gets a counter hit on my tank here, but I've already kind of got the KO, so I'm feeling pretty happy about it. Shuffling units, like I said, they start pulling back. I think they think I'm going for a central rotation. So even with this infantry on the mountains, they're still fairly scared, I think, of me pushing from the middle. So they actually end up leaving this property even more isolated, and I saw these units moving to the left, so I know they're kind of pulling back to the center. I reveal this infantry with my infantry moving forward, which opens up an anti-air plus infantry 2-hit KO. Come again with more tanks, get another 2-hit KO on this tank. So I'm checking out another tank, get the recon. I reveal this medium tank, which is pretty good information. Pick off this infantry on the mountain, limiting my opponent's info, and once again I go for this aggressive capture, but I think it's just a bit much. I use the infantry to reveal this artillery in the woods, which lets me move up my tanks really aggressively. And actually, I'm just gonna get a massive hit on it for 9 damage. Feeling pretty good against that one. I'm feeling fairly confident at this point because I just have a bunch of beefy tanks, and I saw my opponent's units all move to the left. And I knew that artillery was still here because of my infantry's position in the mountains before, so it just enabled me to feel like I could confidently go for this attack, especially because I'd picked off this infantry here and I see no units in this area. Oh, I know there's no units in this area. So yeah, feeling really solid about that one. Do have to be cautious about covering fire. Honestly, maybe it's a bit too aggressive at this point. I feel like I haven't played around covering fire very well this game, but it is one of those things where it really takes experience, I think. Drop another medium tank. I'm gonna lose this infantry that's going for the property. Medium tank's gonna move up, get a big hit on the tank on the road, but I narrowly survive it. I think this is a roll with a comm tower where it could die, but it is gonna get away on 1 HP, so really unfortunate for LNF there. Definitely had some luck rolls this game that got in my safe favor. And if you were paying attention, you would notice LNF saved last turn to build a mega tank this turn. So obviously a big tech up surprise build here. Mega tanks are kind of scary in some ways, and then in some ways also not that big a deal. It just kind of depends. So they actually pulled their units back here, and then I think maybe at this point, it's really interesting, I think, what they did. I think maybe they I don't know, maybe they just didn't think about going for a covering fire attack, and then at some point they realized they could sack for it. So they ended up sacking to get a covering fire, which is going to get 2 missiles on these units, but they have no other units to actually come in and finish them off. So my army is going to survive here. Maybe if they were a bit more assertive with the medium tank at first and just traded aggressively into this medium tank with theirs, they could have got covering fire a bit safer and had more units to kind of maybe pick off some of mine. But I'm going to get away scot-free here. Basically just eat a covering fire without actually taking any material losses. Just kind of like health damage. I choose to just ignore this medium tank here. Picking off infantry, just kind of surrounding it. Which also ends up blocking the medium tank in. I put this tank into the woods aggressively, and I decided to just go for a comm tower cap because it doesn't really feel like my opponent has any units kind of sitting around it. I pick up another infantry here, and you see I'm just really trying to isolate the vision of the medium tank. You know, my opponent has 3 units in this area now, and medium tanks only have a vision of 1, so they really can't see anything. Taking out this infantry on the mountain, just at this point, this medium tank will struggle to attack from next turn because it won't be able to actually see any of my units if I just kind of put them out of range. So I retreat on the lower side, pull all my units back onto cities, try to get some repairing going. And now I'm feeling really confident about this northern side. I pretty much got all the cities here that I can get. And I'm starting to eat these lower cities as well. I've got these 2 wing cities that I'm now contesting. But it is a little bit scary, obviously, with having taken just so much damage on my big tanks. But I am kind of still medium tank chaining down here, you know, I'm just medium spamming. Put this infantry onto the city just to kind of get some scouting going, see what my opponent's forces are kind of sitting. I'm going to lose a tank to that medium tank for my shenanigans last turn, but I'm pretty fine with it. Gonna get interrupted on this cap here. Kind of sucks, but not the end of the world. Looks like I'm going to get this outside city, so that's going to put me now where I feel like I should be 6k up. And I also am going to get this comm tower. My opponent doesn't have any units to interrupt. I have this tank in a good position, I think, in case there was like a unit here that could like go around, but they didn't have any indirects or anything. I just kind of, it's one of those turns where you just kind of see if it works. And it looks like it is end up going to get it working. So I'm actually going to get a double comm tower swing here, which is obviously really influential. So now I'm sitting at 20%. And I take that as a cue to just ram my opponent with some big attacks, you know. I saw with my infantry on the mountains that there was no artillery able to... I think this artillery moved before. So there's no artillery in range of this medium tank, and it's on a city, so I just take an aggressive hit on this tank for 9 damage. Shuffling my units around on the top side. Like I said, my opponent now has no vision in this area, so this medium tank is pretty much useless because it's just blind. And then I was thinking about it this turn that my map is just so bright, man. It's so rare that you can actually see this much. I feel like I have so much vision on this map. Especially when I start getting some infantry in the mountains over the next few turns, you'll just see I have so much vision. It's so weird. My opponent's next turn, I'm going to get this property, but yeah, this infantry is going to get interrupted again, but it does bait another tank attack. I start going for this contested as well, especially because I'm moving more tanks in from the northern side. Pulled a lot back from this area, left a few to cover. I actually had this really aggressive infantry position on the mountains as well, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'm actually revealing any of my opponent's units coming from this base now. So I know, I think I actually know there's an artillery in here. So I just know my opponent has no vision, because yeah, I have this infantry sitting on this mountain, which is revealing the reinforcement line. So actually really influential information, I think, coming from this infantry. This infantry goes in the mountain, which reveals the comm tower, which lets the medium tank actually get a hit in. Could have gone for the hit on the tank, that was also revealed, but they choose to hit the infantry on the comm instead, try to re-establish some control over it. This tank goes in to try and get some vision, doesn't get trapped by my recon. And I'm very close to a Typhoon, and my opponent's pretty far from a covering fire. So I'm hoping I can get a big Typhoon turn coming up. My next turn, I'm just going to pick off some of the central infantry. I choose to join cap here so they can get away with it. I move in to hit this infantry. I don't go for the woods because I know there's a unit in there, which means I narrowly missed the information on the mega tank, which is pretty unfortunate. So I'm creeping this infantry forward, trying to threaten this property. I even use a medium tank to block this off because I figured, like, what could they possibly have that could just take out a medium tank instantly? I don't think there's any unit in the game that could do that, so I should totally use this medium tank to block this property, which means I will get it 100%. Pulling over my units to reinforce. I end up sitting the tank on this this comm tower because I know it will kind of like disrupt this medium tank's pressure, at least for a couple of turns. Like the infantry would have died, right? But this AHP tank I think should survive on the terrain at least one turn. This infantry getting even more information. I see another tank coming out from the top side. So getting pretty much perfect information on any northern builds that my opponent goes for right now. And I throw the missiles in at the end of the day just to get some information. You fought well, and it does reveal the mega tank. Definitely in hindsight, probably should have done the other way around and thrown the missiles in first if I was gonna do it, but hey, what can you do? I'm gonna lose that medium tank to a unit that one-shots it. Can't believe it, that was crazy. This tank narrowly survives on 1 HP to the 2 hit. My infantry on the city getting interrupted, but I did join cap. I think it's still fairly close, but yeah, it should be at like 6 HP, and it won't do quite enough to be able to survive or be able to get the city, at least this turn. And I get witness of all these tanks kind of moving out on the northern side. This infantry moves forward, revealing my infantry, and sadly it takes a big hit here, which is kind of a shame because this infantry was in charge of trying to get the city. Now it's definitely going to be a bit of a blundered plan. But my opponent is attacking into me right on the turn. I'm going to get a Typhoon, which obviously I am going to drop. Use my 2 HP tank to pick up this 1 HP tank. Getting some trades in with the infantry here. Move the recon in really aggressively, revealing this artillery that was left on the road, and also picking off an infantry here. Lets me swing around with this tank, which lets me move in with another tank to hit this one that was on 7 HP, bringing another tank in. And you see, I'm kind of just choosing to ignore the mega tank here. This is a pretty good way to kind of deal with this kind of unit, is it only has 3 HP, so if you can just surround it with enough targets that aren't particularly valuable, like just regular tanks, You know, if a mega tank kills 3 tanks, it didn't even get its build worth of value, you know? Obviously, it's extremely tanky. It takes a while to take down. But if it doesn't kill, yeah, at least, you know, if I guess it did kill a medium tank already, but, you know, even a medium tank plus 2 tanks, it's only getting 2k of value there. And then it's just going to sit there kind of accomplishing nothing. So I'm just kind of choosing to try and ignore it as much as I can. It's kind of my way to deal with this problem. Bringing my heavy tanks to pick off these units here. Getting some cleanup kills. And then I think at this point, I definitely should be looking more for an HQ win con. Pick up this tank on the city, which lets me also walk up really aggressively here and go for this hit. I think this is a bit crazy, given that I know that my opponent has artillery in this area, but just trying to split my opponent's resources, I think, as much as I can. Just taking fights kind of everywhere at the same time and taking as much advantage of monsoon as possible. Reinforcing with more tanks, more medium tanks, bringing in more artillery as I try to siege these properties or even the HQ. This poor mech left here with nothing to hit because it can't do anything against these bigger tanks. Did pull a medium tank around here as well to threaten this tank. Trying to open up this property to be captured. I really didn't have much money this turn, I think, because I was repairing a bunch of big tanks or something. So yeah, I managed to get some small builds the last couple of days. This tank pulls out, running away. I'm gonna lose this anti-air to this medium tank, but it is pulling resources to the top side, and it's kind of just tanksy, you know? Like, if it's just tanks v tanks, no, it doesn't really matter to me if I'm kind of losing. If my opponent doesn't have the infantry to actually threaten any of my cities. The medium tank does get another pick off on a tank. Once again, I get interrupted, but I am narrowly at enough HP that I should be able to pick up this contested property if I don't get hit again. Copter coming out from my opponent. And the recon chooses to play defensively. I don't know if it could make it. Maybe it couldn't make it in the rain. Maybe rain actually secured this property. Can you show me the recon's move? Please, Mr. Replay. Oh, it keeps coming out as weighted. Okay, wait, let me get to the end of the turn. Yeah, that's the end of the turn. Let's just see, it's okay. I just want to see if it could have moved. The game it's just not gonna play nice. It's not gonna play nice at all, is it? I just want to see if the recon could have made it. I think maybe actually in planes, the wheels are actually too inhibited to actually make it to this infantry. So I'm going to narrow to be able to swing this property. Put me 7k up, 8k up. Pick up this recon with my medium tank. Putting a recon in aggressively so I can get some scouting going. Is that actually a missiles that's there? I don't think so. I don't know why there's a random acid rain missiles here. The game's trying to bait me into thinking everybody's building missiles now. I'm the only missile builder around these parts. So I'm picking up this infantry on the wing. I managed to snipe an artillery here on the shoals, but I don't know about this artillery hidden in the woods, so it's gonna get a big hit probably. Use my medium tank, pick up this infantry in the city. Just throwing infantry in the mountains. You can see here, I just have so much vision, man. I can just see everything. It's crazy. I surround the mega tank, only has 1 ammo. Just surround it with regular tanks. It's probably gonna take out this full HP one, but overall, you know, it's pretty much it's done its job. It's picked up a few tanks, but at this point, I'm just gonna surround it and inhibit its usefulness. I end up getting trapped with my Neo tank finally. Didn't even know there was an artillery in here. It's kind of crazy. Sucks for my regular tank, but hey. Oh well. I've got an anti here as well, covering for these copter hits. I'm feeling pretty fine about that. What is I start coming in? They're still cleaning up these northern units where they can. Covering fire does come out. I don't actually know where it would have hit. I guess it did hit this medium tank at the very least. I'm gonna lose that recon. And the artillery actually chooses to pull back instead of go for the head of this tank. I thought that was kind of interesting. But it is going to manage to survive and kind of get in a good position. And at this point, I'm thinking, you know, I should just go for the HQ capture probably. I'm kind of controlling this area now, pushing all my opponent's units back. They go for a sneaky attempt on the comm tower, but I'm just going to interrupt that with the recon that was defending it. And then, yeah, I just start wailing on this medium tank. It's just machine guns now, so it doesn't do any damage. Back, basically. Just enables me to pick it off before. It's the same, you know, concept as well. I don't want to let this get to a city. And you know, it can be very easy for my opponent to just pick off one of these weakened tanks and then pull the medium tank out. I was kind of surprised as well. I think it was definitely possible that they could have tried to sit it on a city to get repaired. But they did go for the attack instead. But yeah, I do want to make sure to finish this off, and I do get it, because, you know, as soon as I let a Rachel repair on a mega tank, like, that's so much value, you know. Obviously it's pretty costly, but, you know, you're repairing 7,200 worth of funding value, and then you get the 3 ammo back, and it's just a whole can of worms. So yeah, moving more units in again. Building another Neo finally. Stop repairing my big tank, so I actually finally have money again. Start moving this infantry in position to threaten the HQ. Coming to my next turn. As you see, we're just kind of reaching the end of the game here. I meant to move in with a tank here. I meant to move in with this 2 HP tank to reveal these units, because I obviously knew they were there, especially because of this infantry in the mountains, but I accidentally moved in with the Neo tank, which is kind of a disaster, because obviously I need the Neo tank to kill things, and also it doesn't have any vision. So, definitely a bit of a mistake there, but I end up just, you know, sitting on the HQ, and then basically just moving all my units into a wall. At this point, I don't think my opponent just has the ability to even get through this army to reach the HQ in time, so I decided to commit to the walling anyway. Pushing through, trying to get as much damage as they can, and they build, you know, the respectful missiles as well. That's where the missiles came from. They go for the double missiles build. I wuss out and build regularly on this turn, but obviously, you know, I am going to finish the game with a pipe runner right before I get the HQ capture. So overall, pretty intense, pretty fun game. Lots of front switching, lots of big supers going on. Definitely a longer video than we've had recently. You know, this one went for about an hour. But overall, yeah, I think pretty enjoyable game overall. Lost of Foul, great player, really interesting game. We have this weird trifecta going on where they keep beating Kanbei. Kanbei keeps beating me, and then I've beaten Lost and Found. So we all counter each other somehow. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Really helps out the channel. You can also subscribe for more content like this. Like I say, I'm going on a trip for a bit, so expect a little bit of a hiatus in content, probably around until the 27th, 28th again. Didn't manage to get too many good games lately, so I didn't have too many videos pre-recorded, sadly. This is kind of one of my recent good replays. But hopefully when I come back, I'll have some games done, and we can start getting on some more content again. Apologies for having a bit of a delay again after I just started re-uploading regularly, but yeah, unfortunately, like I said, I'm going away for a bit, so nothing I can really do about it. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. My name has been Slich, this has been CO Select, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!